and Views Productions is officially sponsored by Zan's Celebration Popcorn. Handcrafted with love in small batches, every single bag is a celebration. We now feature 11 delicious, sweet, and crunchy flavors, including our newest additions, pink cream and pink lemonade. Try them today with our $1 sample bags. To order, call or text us at 815-275-5468 or pay with ease on Cash App at hashtag ZandraBright1.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Voices and Views with Zan. And tonight we got a good conversation. I hope everybody's gonna join in the conversation so I'm not left doing all the talking. And the title of tonight's show is What Does Justice Look Like in Our Community? What does justice look like in our community? So when I say our community, I'm talking about my community, your community, wherever you're from, everybody's community. What do justice look like in your community? Justice is one of those words we hear all the time. We hear it when someone goes to court. We hear it when there's a crime. We hear it when someone believes they have been treated unfairly. We hear politicians talk about it. We hear law enforcement talk about it. And we hear families demanding it. But tonight, I want us to go deeper than simply using the word justice. What does justice actually look like? What does it look like? Is it simply following the law? Is justice making sure everyone gets the same treatment? Is justice making sure everyone is heard? Is justice admitting when a mistake has been made? Or is justice holding people accountable regardless of who they are or what position they hold? Justice is justice. It doesn't matter what position someone holds. And what happens when someone believes the system that is supposed to provide justice has failed them? This subject has become especially important to me because of something my family recently have experienced. I'm not going to make tonight's show's entire discussion about my personal situation because this conversation is bigger than me and bigger than my family. But sometimes, you know what? Life puts you in a position where something you once discussed from a distance, suddenly it becomes something personal. You can relate to it. You have a situation. You begin asking questions differently. You begin wondering what happens to people who do not have a voice, who do not know where to turn, who simply give up because fighting for answers sometimes, you know what, it can become exhausting. And that's where I want to begin tonight. I want this to be an open conversation. So I want all of us to think, I want us to talk, and most importantly, I want us to listen. So tonight, I'm asking everybody watching, when you hear the word justice, what do it mean to you personally? I'll give you a second or two if anybody want to answer. When you hear that word justice, what do it mean to you personally? I'll get on the comment screen in case anybody has any comments and I can know if they had something to say. So, not the dictionary definition of justice, your definition. What does justice look like to you? What does justice look like to you? What is justice? When most people hear the word justice, they immediately think about the criminal justice system. Yeah, people immediately think about the criminal justice system. They think about police, the judges, the lawyers, the courts, the jails. But justice is much bigger than just a courtroom. much bigger. Justice exists in our schools, it exists in our workplaces, it exists in our neighborhoods, it exists in healthcare, it exists in local government, it exists in the way businesses treat their customers, it exists in how organizations treat volunteers and employees. Justice exists anywhere one person or institution has power that can affect another human being. Yes. And I think sometimes we make a mistake when we assume justice simply means just following a rule. So much more than that, because rules themselves can sometimes be applied unfairly. Would you agree? Rules for certain people. Two people can experience the exact same system and walk away with completely different experiences. Have you been in a situation like that? Somebody else was in the same situation and they walk away with different experiences. One person may feel respected, but another might feel that they've been dismissed. One person may receive immediate assistance, another may struggle just to get someone to listen. One person's complaint may be taken seriously, another person's complaint may be immediately be questioned, you know? So maybe justice is not about whether rule was followed. Maybe justice is also about how people are treated while that rule is being followed. Justice should include dignity. Justice should include fairness. Yeah, it should. Justice should include transparency. And justice should include accountability. Yes, somebody should be held accountable for whatever. And justice should include the willingness to correct something when it is wrong. Because no institution is perfect, no police department is perfect, no government is perfect, no court is perfect, and no organization is perfect. The real test is not whether mistakes happen, because we know they do. The real test is what happened when a mistake is discovered. Yeah. I had a situation recently which I discussed on another earlier show that I had on racism. It's still posted up if you guys want to go back and pull it up. It talks a little bit more about a situation I'm going through now. Does someone say we need to look into this, or does everyone immediately become defensive? Sometimes people just become defensive when you're asking about justice or trying to get justice. Does protecting the institution become more important than finding the truth? That is a question worth discussing. So let me ask everybody watching. Do you believe justice means treating everybody exactly the same? Or does justice sometimes mean considering people's individual circumstances? Me personally, I can tell you that justice as should deal with everybody's single situation, because all situations are different. You can't apply that same justice across the board for everyone. Every situation isn't the same, so it's not going to have the same outcome. Being heard is part of justice. Somebody's listening, they're hearing you, they're taking it all in. That's part of justice, being heard. Sometimes people are not asking for money, sometimes they're not asking for revenge, and sometimes they're not asking for somebody to lose their job. Sometimes they may simply want someone in authority to listen and to say, I hear what you're saying and I'm willing to look into it. And that sentence right there, that can mean a lot. That someone is listening and they're willing to look into your situation. Because when someone believes something is wrong has happened, being ignored can sometimes hurt as much as the original situation. If everybody's ignoring you and you're not getting a response, it can hurt even more. Imagine experiencing something frightening, upsetting, or traumatic. You gather your thoughts, you gather whatever information you have, you make your photographs, maybe even a video. I had to do both. Maybe witnesses, maybe records. And you approach the proper authorities believing that somebody's going to listen. What should happen next? What should happen next? At the very least, you should feel that your concerns was taken seriously. You should have that feeling that somebody's going to listen. And it shouldn't matter who you are. It shouldn't be your concerns is less than the next person. Justice does not mean the person complaining is automatically right. But fairness requires that everyone is heard. That everyone is heard. There's a huge difference between someone saying, I disagree with your conclusion after reviewing everything, and someone saying in so many words, I have already decided what happened, so I don't need to hear anything else. That can be very disheartening. If somebody already made up their mind about your situation and they don't even want to hear more, that means they already one sided. There are two completely different experiences. And I think sometimes people lose trust in institutions not because they were denied the answer they wanted, but because they felt nobody genuinely listened. And that is important because when people stop believing they will be heard, they stop reporting things. And I think that's happening a lot in the world that we in now. People are afraid to report things for several reasons. They're afraid of retaliation. They're afraid of how they will be viewed. They're afraid of, just coming forth, the fear of nothing's going to happen. But if you don't lose that fear and come forward, then nothing will happen because nobody knows. So you got to take that step. Okay. They stop believing because they think they won't be heard and they stop reporting, they stop participating, and they stop reaching out. Eventually, they began saying what we always hear, what's the point? What's the point of reporting it? But you never know. You never know when there'll be that one person that might be willing to listen to what you have to say. And once the community reaches that point, we have a much bigger problem. So I ask you, have you ever tried to report a problem to an organization, to a business, to a government office, to a school, employer, or other institution and felt that nobody truly was listening? I'm sure you have. I'm sure you reported things and people just act like it wasn't important or, it wasn't important to them enough to look any further. You do not have to name anybody, but have you just put yes? Have you ever been in a situation someone's important to you and you was reporting it and they just act like it wasn't important? So, did that make you trust them any less? Did you stop trying? Did you feel powerless? Or did you continue pushing until somebody finally listened? I hope the latter is what you did. You kept pushing until, hey, somebody's going to listen to me. I have a concern here. Accountability does not mean attacking people. It does not mean attacking people. Accountability is the word that made people feel uncomfortable. For some reason, accountability is often treated like an attack. People feel like you attacking them just because you want them to be held accountable. For some reason, they think it's an attack. If you question someone, certainly they think you're against them. Just because you question them, they think you're against them or you're against this thing because you have questions. If you question a department, somehow they'll say, you hate the department. No, I don't hate the department. I just have questions and concerns about the department. It doesn't mean your concerns is because you hate the department. If you challenge a report or decision, somehow some people think you're being disrespectful. But that cannot be how a healthy community operates. Accountability does not automatically mean accusing someone of being a bad person. It means asking important questions. Was the job done correctly? Were procedures followed? Was the information accurate? Were all the sides considered? And was everybody treated fairly? That's the main thing. Was everybody treated fairly? And if something went wrong, how do we correct it? If we acknowledge that it's wrong, how do we correct it? Accountability actually strengthens institutions. A trustworthy organization should be able to examine itself, should be able to take the criticism, should be able to take that to heart and think, hmm, maybe we need to look into this. Maybe we do need to change something. A good leader should be able to say, we may need to review this. That's a good leader. A good employee should be able to say, maybe I could have handled that a little differently. And a good community should be able to ask questions without immediately dividing into teams. We don't need to separate to ask questions to get a point across and to bring something forward. Because we have become very quick to just choose sides. Police versus the citizens, government versus residents, employees versus management, young versus the old, political party versus political party, neighborhood versus neighborhood. But sometimes there should not be a team. Sometimes there should simply be a question. What happened? That should be the question. And then, what is the fairest response? We can support institutions and still demand accountability. I mean, you can still support a business, but you want to know what happened, why that happened. You have that right. Two things can exist at the same time. You can respect the law enforcement and still believe an officer's actions should be reviewed. Yes, I'm going to say that again. You can respect law enforcement and still believe that officers' actions should be reviewed. You have that right. You can respect local government and still have a question or decision. Still question the decision that your local government have made. You have that right. You can appreciate a business and still believe that business handled something incorrectly. You can love your community and still admit that something in that community needs fixing. Let's face it, we all live in a community where something needs to be fixed. If not, I like to know where you live. You live in a perfect community. Every community have things to be fixed. People need to stand up, make sure people take accountability, and use your voice. Because ignoring problems, it's not going to make them disappear. It's going to still be there. It simply allows them to continue. So let me ask you guys, why do you think people become so defensive when somebody asks for accountability? Why are people on the defense when you ask them, hey, why is this not right? Or why is this? And people automatically jump up to the defense. Why do you think that is? Because do we sometimes confuse accountability with punishment? If I have a complaint and a concern and I'm in a community, I have the right. Should leaders become difficult questions? I believe leadership is not just about being praised when things go right. Leadership is about correcting things, listening to things, and try to make things right. Leadership is also about being willing to answer questions when something goes wrong. Can't close up, can't accuse that person of being indifferent just because they have a question. We all have brains in our head, we have our own minds, our own hearts, and we have the right to ask questions in our community. Now, I want to raise another serious issue. What happens when the official version of an event and experience of the people involved do not match? What happens? I experienced that recently. Recently, I witnessed something, and thank goodness for videos. And people can say what they want about videos, but thank goodness for being able to take a video and take photos, because when they got a report, everything was false. But I have video to prove it was false. So it's needed. And that can happen in a lot of situations. It can happen in a medical record, it can happen in a school disciplinary action, it can happen in employee evaluation, a police report, an insurance claim, a government document. Written records matter. They matter because years later, people might not be, they might forget what the conversation was. So get in the habit of making notes, keeping written records. That way, you don't have to go back. And for me, I kept videos, I kept written records, I kept photos. So if my brain don't remember, I can go back and say, "Oh yeah, this is the way this happened at this time." I don't have to recall all of that on my on. Thank goodness for technology. Yes, that document remains. Those photos remain and those videos until you get rid of it. That document may influence another person's decision. It may become evidence. It may affect somebody's reputation. It may affect whether somebody receives services or not. And it may even affect the outcome of a legal matter. Very important if it's a legal matter. If someone believes information in an official document is incorrect, there should be a process for reviewing that concern. Not because every complaint is automatically correct. When you submit something in, of course, it has to be reviewed. It's only fairly, but it doesn't mean that everything is correct. But because documentation, it carries power. Mm-hmm. Carries power. You have things written down. People can't say, "Oh, that didn't happen." That then you can say, "Here, it's documented." Imagine something happening to you and then reading a written account that does not reflect what you remember. Recently, that happened to me. And thank God for documentation. Thank goodness. for documentation, what would you do? Would you accept it? No. Would you challenge it? Yes, I am. And if you challenge it, what do you expect the institution to do? My situation, I expect this institution to apologize and to correct the action that was taken that was false. This is where transparency becomes important. If a video exists, review it. If photographs exist, go ahead and examine them. If recordings exist, preserve them. If timestamps exist, compare them. If other documents exist, look at those too. Because you know what? Technology gives us more ways than ever to establish exactly what occurred. But evidence only matters if people are willing to examine it. So, let me give you a thought before I do a community break. Think about this for a minute. What is the purpose of evidence if a conclusion has already been made before the evidence is considered? What is the purpose of an investigation if one side feels nobody genuinely investigated it? And what happens to public trust when people believe that official records matter more than the truth behind those records? That is serious because when we depend on records, we depend on reports, we depend on people in authority to document situations accurately. When that trust is shaken, rebuilding it becomes difficult. So here's my question for you. If someone challenges an official report and it has evidence that appears to contradict part of that report, do you believe the agency involved should be required to review that evidence? Do you believe they are required to review that evidence? My answer is wholeheartedly, you bet your bridges they are. They are required to review the evidence. And if the evidence proved that something in the original report was wrong, what should happen next? Should the report be corrected? Should someone be notified? Should procedures change? What does accountability look like in that situation? What does it look like? All right, I'm going to do a few community announcements so people don't think we forgot about them, okay? So let's do a few announcements here. Yeah, I can see what's going on in our community. And I do read community announcements that's going on in our community, pulling from Facebook. If you guys have announcements, as anybody, you can send them in to Voices and Views Productions. We're on Facebook. We stream live on TikTok like we're doing now. And YouTube is Voices and Views Productions. And you can send me a screenshot of whatever. It don't matter where you are. I'll read your announcements for your community. So right now, Friday, August 28th. Oh, that's coming up. That's in a couple of days here from 4 to 8 p.m. They're going to be doing the Paint the Port 2026. And that event is going to be at 22 East Exchange Street here in Freeport, Illinois. And it says Paint the Port is back on Friday. Grab a brush, claim your square, help turn downtown Freeport into a colorful, wonderful work of art. This beloved family street paint party is part creativity, part community celebration, and 100% fun. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just here for the vibes, Paint the Port is where you need to be. They have it nice and colorful when they go down there to paint. Okay. trying to get everything in order. It might not be in order. Next announcements is the fifth annual Terrence Cheeto Haynes 3-on-3, Saturday, September the 5th, 10 a.m. until dawn. It's a 303 basketball game. It's no charge for this event at the Boys and Girls Club, and it's a sponsorship that's put on every year and sponsored in the memory of Terrence Cheeto Haynes, who lost his life. FACE presents Passport to Resources, September 17th. That's on a Thursday at the Freeport Middle School. Look like it's going to be resources, games, and activities, family support, come learn, win, visit resource stations, collect stamps for your passport to win prizes. And it's put on by the Freeport School District 145. This guy I had on here not long ago from the Air Show. I interviewed him on Voices and Views, and I just wanted to say it was very good. So the skies are calling. This is the Northwest Illinois Air Show coming up. The skies are calling September the 19th at the Albertos Airport here in Freeport. It's going to be a great lineup with food trucks, kids area, souvenir stand, and all kind of aircraft you can see. $15 advance, 20 at the gate. Gates open 10:30, but the show don't start till 1:30. But you need to get there, get your spot, bring your chair, set up. No coolers are allowed, and you guys know why. They'll have everything out there for you to eat and to do everything. Okay, a couple more here. The Colors of Hope Cancer Ball. This is not going to be to October 3rd, Saturday, October 3rd, 2026. The Masonic Temple from 6 p.m. to midnight. It says Hope, Support, Strength, Together We Can. For ticket information, you can call Tiffany Harris, Susan Hughes, Jerry Harris, or Romero Stedman. Donation is $35. And Together We Fight Together. And it will be featuring the Synergy Band. This is on Facebook. So you can tune in to the show. We'll keep reading that announcement till it gets up to that time. I want to announce our new show here on Voices and Views. I am filling up the days. I am still looking for another host to come in to take a day and to do their own show. Right now, our Monday shows is Yapping with the Youth, which they are on season break because the kids are back in school now. But we have our Youth Enrichment show, Yapping with the Youth, on Mondays. Tuesday, we have our new Taste, Try, and Tell show. That's with me and Scott. And what we do, sometimes we go on location, or we do here. We try different foods from restaurants. You can even be a home cook, have something you cook well. You send it to us. We try it on air. If you have a product to send to us, we'll try it on air. We promote your business that day, so you get free advertisement on the show. All right. So I think I'm going to leave off with there. I just want to shout out to thank you to everybody who participated in our Golden Days picnic and bingo game that we had on last Saturday at the Freeport Public Library. It was an event put on by my nonprofit organization, Operation Love Freeport, and we had a nice crowd and nice gifts for the seniors. It was for 60 and over, and we had food and just had a lot of fun. So we had a great response and great people reaching out. They want to do it again. So I want to tell them I took a survey. So seniors, be prepared. I will sponsor your bingo game again. I think we're going to do it in October, and we're going to make it a secretive. We're going to make working out some details with something fun. Also announcement, Operation Love Pantry. We call it Love Pantry because people say food pantry, but we don't just have a bunch of food. We have non-perishable food. We have clothing, household items, and personal care items galore. So, and that's on Fridays. We're only open the first and the third Friday of every month. That's here in Freeport, Illinois, from 11 to 3, the first and the third Friday of every month, to allow us time to stop back up, to fill everything back up. So, that is going to conclude our announcement. So let's get back to the show. All right. So every community has people and institutions with authority. Police officers have authority, judges have authority, government officials have authority, school administrators have authority, employers have authority, medical institutions, and authority is necessary. Society could not function without it. Somebody has to have authority. Can you imagine if nobody had authority? But wherever there is power, there almost always should be accountability. Somebody's got to be held accountable. Somebody's got to be in charge. Somebody got to make sure everybody's treated fairly. That doesn't mean assuming people with authority is corrupt. No, no. That doesn't mean assuming everybody in government is bad. It does mean assuming every officer, judge, administrator, doctor, employer, or official is doing something wrong. Most people working in these professions probably entered them because they wanted to do something meaningful. But good intentions do not remove the need for oversight. In fact, oversight protects everybody. It protects the public, it protects honest employees, it protects good leaders, it protects organizations from allowing poor practices to become normal, because sometimes one person mistakes becomes another person's habit. Oh yeah. Then that habit becomes the department's culture. And before long, people start saying, that's just how things are done. Mm-mm. Those can be dangerous words. That's how we've always done it. Doesn't automatically mean that's right. How many times you guys heard that? Well, that's how we always do it. Well, you probably was always doing it wrong. Doesn't mean it was right because you've always done it this way. Doesn't mean it shouldn't change because you've always done it this way. There's always room for improvement and correction. We should always be willing to ask, is this still the best way after all this time? Is this still fair? Is this still being transparent? Is there any an independent review process that people can go through? Can people file complaints without fearing retaliation? I think that's a lot of times people don't file complaints because they have the fear of being retaliated against. And that shouldn't be. Who reviews those complaints? Does the institution investigate itself? They should, to a certain point. Is there outside oversight? What happens when a complaint involves somebody in authority? Mm, mm. What happens when a person's making a complaint feels intimidated or afraid? What happens then? Those questions shouldn't offend us, though. They shouldn't offend us. Not at all. They should strengthen our systems. If a system is fair, questions shouldn't threaten it. If you're fair, you shouldn't feel threatened. Why would you feel threatened if it's fair? A strong system should be able to withstand the scrutiny. So let me ask you, who should hold powerful institutions accountable? Should institutions police themselves? Should elected officials be responsible? Should there be independent boards? Should the courts play that role? What about the media? Should the public play that role? Or should it be some combination of all of them? I believe a little combination of all of them. And another question, who watches the people who are responsible for watching everybody else? That is something every community should think about. Who watches the people who are responsible for watching everybody else? Who's watching them to make sure they're doing the right thing? Here's something else that I would think about. What happens to the person who does not know anybody? What happens to the person that does not know an attorney? What happened to the person who does not know the mayor? What happened to the person who does not know a council member? The person who does not have a public platform. That's one thing I can thank God for, that I have a voice and I have a public platform where if I have a situation, I can use my platform and use my voice. It's called Voices and Views for a reason. On this platform, people are free to express their views using their voice. Okay, the person who does not complain, do they understand the complaint process? The person who does not know which documents to request, the person who does not know the right words to use, the person who's elderly, the person who has a disability, or the person who struggles to communicate or not have transportation, or maybe they can't afford professional help. Justice cannot depend on who you know. It cannot. You got to be able to reach out. There's somebody out there that can help you if you don't know the steps, if you don't know the people. You have to get involved in your community to know the people who to get in touch with if you have a problem. It cannot depend on whether your name carries weight. Can't depend on that. Um, I feel like this. My name don't really carry weight as far as going out there changing laws and all that. But I feel like my voice is just important as anybody else's voice. Is as important as the elected officials and everybody else. So be it. And so is yours and yours. It cannot depend on whether you have money either. No, you still, if you're mistreated or you're not receiving justice, it shouldn't depend on whether you have any money to go out and hire a big team. You should be able to have some justice without all of that. Okay. It cannot depend on whether you have followers on social media. Social media is a powerful tool, though. I can say that as a social media creator. It's a powerful tool. You have to be very careful, though. Very careful that you get the right information out there. You're not doing any judging on somebody's situation that you know nothing about. It cannot depend on whether somebody important will return your phone call. Well, I'm not going to say anything because I just want this person to call. No. A fair community should create systems that an ordinary person should be able to navigate. An ordinary person in the community should know the steps to take when they don't feel justice has been served or they don't feel they've been treated fairly. For an ordinary person, the community's responsibility is to have those things in place so you don't have to jump through hoops to get justice for whatever you need. Yes. People should know where to file a complaint. People should know who's going to review it, how long that process is going to take. Will I receive a written response? What's going to happen if I disagree with your response? Am I going to be allowed to file an appeal? Because I don't have to agree with your response. If I don't, I should be able to file an appeal and keep going after it till something gets done. Okay, so who's going to oversee the process then? That's important to know. Where can I get help with understanding my rights? Those answers should not be mysteries. Nope, should not be mysteries, because confusing systems benefit people who already understand the system. Transparency gives ordinary people a chance. A chance. And sometimes the people who need justice the most are the people with the fewest resources to fight for it. And that is so true. Most of the time, the people that need justice or need help is the people that have the fewest resources to do anything about the situation. So most of the time, they don't do anything about it. They just let it go. Think about that. If it take money, connections, education, influence, or public attention just to get somebody to listen, then what happens to everybody else? That is why access matters. Justice should not only be available to people who know how to work the system. Justice should be clear and understandable for everybody. Justice should be something an ordinary resident can seek without feeling like they need an entire legal team just to get an answer. So I want to ask you, do you think the average person knows what to do when they believe a government agency or institution has treated them unfairly? Do you think they know what to do? Do the average person know what to do? I'm not speaking of somebody in authority knowing what to do. Do the average person, you and me, know what to do when we're being treated unfairly? If not, whose responsibility is it to make that information easier to find? Your community? Your community is their job, and communities should do a better job of educating residents about their rights, about the complaint and appeal process that already exists. These processes are already in place for people to use, but do they know about? Do they know they exist? What about justice versus revenge? That's something that people be afraid of. Revenge. What's going to happen if I speak up? If I try to get justice for this and that? I also want to make an important distinction tonight, too. Justice and revenge are not the same thing. Mm-mm, not the same thing. Revenge says, I want you to hurt because I hurt. That's revenge. Justice says, I want the truth established, accountability where necessary, and safeguards so this doesn't happen again. That's where I am. That difference matters. When people seek justice, others sometimes accuse them of being angry, bitter, or trying to destroy somebody's career. That's not what it's about. I'm seeking justice. So if you just go on the defense that I'm trying to damage your career, then what is it that you worried about that you're doing? You know that's a sign of guilt. But sometimes the goal is not destruction. Sometimes the goal is simply correction. Maybe somebody needs additional training. Maybe it's a policy that just needs to change, huh? Maybe report needs to be corrected. Maybe supervision is needed. Everybody can be supervised or retrained. Maybe communication procedures needs to be improved. Maybe disciplinary action is appropriate. And maybe an apology is appropriate. We gets away from that, because systems, when there's injustice, they don't feel that, most of them, that they got to give an apology. Maybe somebody needs to acknowledge that something could have been handled a little bit differently. Every situation is different. Justice should seek a response that matches exactly what happened, because that's fairness. Accountability without fairness can become revenge. Can become revenge. It can. But forgiveness without accountability can sometimes become permission. There has to be a balance. And I think that is something we have to be careful about when we're discussing justice. We should not decide what someone deserves before we know all the facts. Just as we expect institutions to listen before reaching conclusions, we have to hold ourselves to the same standard. Justice has to work both ways. The person making an accusation deserves to be heard. The person being accused deserves to be heard also. Evidence should matter, facts should matter, and context should matter. And the truth should matter more than personal feelings. Yes, that can be difficult because when something happens to us, when someone we love, our emotions are involved, and we are human. We are human. But real justice required us to ask not only what do I want, but also what's fair. We're talking about justice, so what's fair? So here's a question for everybody watching. Can you seek justice without seeking revenge? I can. I'm seeking justice right now on a particular issue. I'm not seeking revenge. I'm going the steps that I need to go and gonna hold people accountable because that's my right. I'm not on a revenge tip trying to make anybody lose a job or get demoted. Maybe this person just needs to be retrained. Or maybe it's too late and they just need to be gone. But can you seek justice without seeking revenge? You absolutely can. And how do we make sure our desire for accountability does not turn into a desire simply to hurt somebody back? Where is that going to get you? How do we rebuild trust? Trust takes years to build and sometimes only minutes to damage. But damaged trust doesn't have to remain broken. Mm-mm. Institutions can rebuild trust, communities can rebuild trust, but trust cannot be demanded, it has to be earned. And rebuilding trust usually requires several things. It requires honesty, transparency, communication, accountability, and consistency. And sometimes two very difficult words. Well, three actually. We were wrong. Somebody needs to say that on one side. Somebody had to been wrong. There is power in admitting a mistake. People sometimes believe admitting a mistake makes them look weak. No, no, no. I believe the opposite. An organization that can admit a mistake and correct it, that shows strength. A leader who can say, we reviewed this and we could have handled it better, demonstrates leadership. An employee who can say, I made a mistake and I want to correct it, demonstrates character. Because people are much more willing to trust someone who says, we reviewed this, something went wrong, here's what we're doing about it, than someone who insists that nothing happened when the evidence shows otherwise. And that's enough to burn you up when you know. And you know, trust requires communication. Silence creates suspicion. And say that again. Silence, on the other end, creates suspicion. When people ask questions and receive no answers, they begin filling the blanks in themselves. This is human nature, but clear communication can prevent that. Even if investigation is still underway, there are respectful ways to communicate. We receive your complaint, we are reviewing the information, and here's what's going to happen next. Here is who you can contact. Those things matter. Sometimes respect is not complicated. Sometimes it's simple. Simply keeping people informed about what's going on, that they're not just being ignored. And there's another side of this too. Residents also have a responsibility. We cannot demand transparency and then spread information we know is false. We cannot demand fairness, then decide someone is guilty before the facts are known. We cannot demand respectful treatment when we refuse to treat other people respectfully. Justice is a community responsibility. Say that again. Justice is a community responsibility. That does not mean that everybody has equal power, but everyone has a role. So I want to ask, what would an institution have to do to regain your trust after you believe it's treated unfairly? Would apology be enough? Would you need action? Would you need someone held accountable? Which actually reveals trust? I think for me personally, all of the above I just mentioned. All of the above. What does justice look like in your everyday life? We talked a lot tonight about institutions, systems, but justice also shows up in everyday life. Justice is whether we stand up when we see somebody mistreated. Justice is whether we listen before judging. Justice is whether we give people an opportunity to even explain themselves. Justice is whether we treat someone with dignity even when we disagree with them. And sometimes justice requires courage. It can be uncomfortable to speak up, it can be uncomfortable to question authority. It can also be uncomfortable to tell a friend or family member that they're wrong. Justice is not always about standing against somebody else. Sometimes justice means examining ourselves. Have I treated people fairly? Have I listened? Have I judged someone without knowing the full story? Hmm. Have I stayed silent because speaking up would have been inconvenient? Have I experienced grace for myself but refused to give it to someone else? Those are difficult questions. But if we want just communities, justice cannot be something we demand from institutions. It has to become part of how we live because communities are made up of people. Government officials come from communities. Police officers come from communities. Teachers come from communities. Judges come from communities. Business owners come from communities. We all help shape the culture around us. If we want fairness, we have to practice fairness. If we want respect, we have to practice respect. If we want accountability, we have to be willing to accept accountability ourselves. That is when justice becomes more than a word, it becomes a standard. Tonight's conversation was called What Does Justice Look Like in Our Community? I put a lot of questions out there, and maybe the answer is not one thing. Justice look like fairness, justice look like truth, justice look like listening, justice look like accountability, justice looks like accurate information, justice look like transparency, it looks like protecting people's rights. Justice looks like holding people responsible when necessary. Oh, yeah. And justice always look like protecting people from being falsely accused. Justice has to work in both directions. We cannot demand fairness only when fairness benefits us. We have to believe in fairness even when the person receiving it, someone else. Wait, let's read that again. We have to believe in fairness even when the person receiving it is someone we disagree with. That's the difficult part. And I want to leave everybody tonight with a final question. Final question. If you had the power to change one thing about how justice works in your community, what would you change? You can put the comment and your answers after we go off live. This live will be streamed. It will be up so you can still go back and review it. I ask that you please share this live. Give a thumbs up. Follow the Voices and Views page. Give a shout out. Help someone who might be experiencing some kind of injustice by maybe directing them to the right place they need to go. Okay, so if you can change things in your community, would you change how complaints are being handled? Would you improve the communications between the residents and law enforcement? Would you make government records more accessible? Would you educate residents about their rights? Would you create stronger consequences for people who abuse their authority? Would you create better protections for people who are falsely accused? Or would you try to make it easier for ordinary people to challenge information they believe is incorrect? What would you change? Put your comments, your answer in the comments because conversations like this do matter. We cannot fix everything in an hour, but change sometimes begin when somebody finally asks the question that everybody has been afraid to ask. And tonight, that question is, what does justice really look like in your community? For me, justice does not mean automatically taking one side or another. Justice means getting the truth. Justice means listening. Justice means respecting other people's rights. Justice means holding people accountable when accountability is warranted. And justice means having systems strong enough to admit when something needs to be corrected. We should never be afraid to ask questions. We should never be afraid to fully seek answers. And we should never reach the point where ordinary people believe there is no reason to speak because nobody would listen. A healthy community does not silence questions. A healthy community listens to them. A healthy community examines itself. A healthy community corrects what needs to be corrected and protects what is working well. That is how trust grows. That is how communities become stronger. And I believe that is something all of us should want, regardless of what side of the issue we may find ourselves on. Thank you, everybody, for joining the conversation tonight. Thank you for everybody who commented, shared your experience, listened to people whose opinions may have been different from yours. I thank you for that. I ask you to continue this conversation. Listen to each other, ask questions, speak up when something doesn't seem right. And remember that wanting accountability does not mean wanting conflict. Okay? It just means you want a better community. I'm Zan. Again, this has been Voices and Views, good conversation. I thank you guys for tuning in, and we shall be back. And you guys, great conversation. And remember, put your comments in and share this with someone else.
Voices and Views Productions is officially sponsored by Zan's Celebration Popcorn. Handcrafted with love in small batches, every single bag is a celebration. We now feature 11 delicious, sweet, and crunchy flavors, including our newest additions, pink cream and pink lemonade. Try them today with our $1 sample bags. To order, call or text us at 815-275-5468 or pay with ease on Cash App at hashtag ZandraBright1.
All right.